Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the Velocity K25 upgrade webinar. Thank you for joining us this afternoon. Hopefully everybody can see my screen. You've got the opportunity to use the chat feature on the left-hand side should you need to ask anything or raise any issues if you can't see the screens or if the audio's if you're having difficulty with the audio. So in terms of today's session, what we're looking to share with you is an understanding of the benefits and considerations before you start thinking about K25 upgrade. Obviously, when we're talking to clients who are already using previous versions of K2, generally there's some consideration as to where they are in their K2 journey and when they'll be looking at upgrades. So we really just want to share some of our experience, around the benefits of K25, but some of the things also to be thinking about before you embark on the upgrade. We'll also give you an understanding of the sort of timelines and deadlines that exist within the K2 community for the K2 platform, which may give some guidance and understanding as to when you might think about embarking on the upgrade. Finally, we'd like to share our experience of historic upgrades and processes that we've adopted and tools that we've built and adopted to ensure that any upgrade is successful. So for those of you who don't know Velocity, just to give you a little bit of background, we were established in 2010. So as a business, we've got 8 years experience with the K2 platform. A number of our people were with K2 prior to that, so actually, our experience with the overall platform dates back to 2002. We've got 3 offices, one in the UK, centrally located in Milton Keynes. We've got another office in India and another in South Africa. As a business, we specialise on process automation, digital transformation, and obviously we partner with K2 and other vendors to provide best-of-breed technologies to optimise people's businesses. Currently, we're circa 24 people strong. Most of those sit within a development and delivery role. So, we can assist with a number of, or sort of assist in a number of areas and criteria with regards to anything that you're doing on K2. So some of those organisations, just to share with you on the screen now, they include people like Zurich Insurance, the Ministry of Defence, CBRE. We've done work with the NHS in the UK, a number of councils. Generally speaking, companies across all sectors and all markets. If you would like any further information on that, we're happy to share some of the use cases and some of the success stories from those businesses. So moving on then to K25 and the upgrade. I'm sure most of you as K2 users are aware of K25 as a platform and what K25 have done to enhance the platform and the user experience. But we'll just cover off some of those key benefits, but we'll also look at some of the challenges that brings when you start thinking about upgrading. So K25 is a major upgrade from K2 4.7 or Black Pearl. It's a complete platform upgrade, complete platform redesign, and where we're having to pay particular attention is around the workflows. There are some significant architectural changes to the way it handles workflows, and that's probably the area that we're going to focus on most today in terms of the complications around the upgrade and the migration. What the platform does give users, though, is increased performance, far greater workflow execution, and improvements around that piece, and also for packaging and deployment for future development projects. That's far easier, far more streamlined now in K25. Obviously, one of the major implications is that it's now moved to being cloud-enabled, so you can have your K25 on-prem as you do with 4.7 today. And you can have that either with proprietary licenses or subscription licenses, but you can also now move to a cloud environment which is fully run and managed by K2, and obviously you retain all of the same levels of integration, etc., and capabilities that you have, but obviously it's just moved from on-prem to cloud for those people that are considering that as their overall strategy. The pricing model has changed slightly. Obviously, you can still have on-prem proprietary licenses, but it's also moved to a subscription model, and that's based more around numbers of users rather than apps and workflows. There is still a pricing element around apps and workflows, but predominantly it's all around users and volumes of users. Benefits, what does the new platform give you apart from those architectural pieces? Well, some of the nice things that are improved or that come with K25 is the new workflow designer. It's a very, very different look and feel, far more user-friendly look and feel, and the workflow designer now has real-time workflow validation. So you get a nice little warning badge, a little red exclamation mark if something hasn't been validated, if it's not going to run correctly, and obviously that gives you the opportunity just to investigate that, carry out any remedial work before you publish those workflows. So that's quite nice in terms of user engagement. Business rules have been improved, so there's more we can do around automating those business rules, and there are new components built into to K2 and the workspace section of K2. Management is more granular, management's been improved. You've got more granular user access and control, so there's more you can do around that piece. And of course it includes the new app wizard, which has got the smart starter apps. So rather than starting with a blank canvas every time, you can actually pick some of the apps that are already developed within K2, run with those or adapt those, and use those as a starting point for any apps that you're developing. Again, just increasing that user experience and getting to more of a citizen developer environment where you can drive those apps through the line of business. K2 have spent some time increasing the integrations, so we've now got new APIs and improved integrations with REST and OData APIs. Also increased integration with Office 365, with Flow, allowing workflows and processes to be kicked off from K2 and Microsoft and vice versa. So far greater integration there. Talking of Microsoft, we've got greater integration with Exchange and Power BI. Power BI obviously offering you improved analytics through that source, and then obviously you've got the Salesforce integration, which again has been greatly improved for those people that are using Salesforce rather than perhaps Dynamics as their platform. So whilst we've got significant benefits and changes to the architecture within K25, and hopefully you can see there the reasons why you would want to upgrade. Obviously, within any form of upgrade, there are challenges, and K25 is no exemption. I'm sure any of you have been involved in K2 upgrades in the past. You'll know that they do have challenges. And they're not necessarily straightforward. That's not unique to K2. That's something we see in a number of platforms. But we do know that obviously with K25, this being a significant architectural change in the platform, there are going to be some challenges, and obviously there are risks when you look at any upgrade. That needs to be planned for, it needs to be executed correctly, and obviously what you want to do is to reduce any downtime and risk to the business on an ongoing basis. One of the key things to think about is the sort of forward compatibility limitation, and that's really around the 4.7 workflows. K2.5 allows you to run workflows in legacy mode, and will do for a period of time, but obviously at some point you're going to need to think about migrating those workflows from K2 4.7 up to K2.5. Without doing that, obviously the question is that you can upgrade, but you won't be able to take advantage of all of the benefits and the features within the platform related to those workflows. Obviously, with any upgrade, key consideration and key challenge is knowing that things are going to work and continue to work as they do at the moment once you've upgraded. And obviously our aim whenever we're working with a client is to ensure that we reduce any cost of downtime or any cost to the business through downtime of a system. Essentially every second a business wastes managing and maintaining their systems and keeping them up to date is time taken away from delivering the value that your business delivers. So obviously we want to keep that to a minimum. So what we're hoping to take you through today is some ideas and some experience as to how we've gone around ensuring that upgrades to K25 reduce that risk, reduce that complexity, and increase the value that we're giving from that by reducing the overall cost of that upgrade. So as with any platform, there are changes to that platform as time goes by, different versions coming out, etc. So I think it's important really that we just take a little bit of time to make sure that everybody understands the key dates around K2 4.7 and 4.5. And again, that may well influence how you want to adopt the upgrade, when you might want to do that. So some key dates then. Obviously in the green you can see the October 2017 release of K25, and obviously now we're on 5.1. We're expecting to see 5.2 probably slightly later this year, probably August, September time. So K25 is here. It has been for a while. It's a proven platform. It's a robust platform. So I think in terms of worrying about early adopters, etc., that's now past that time, and we're seeing most of our clients starting to either upgrade or certainly plan for that upgrade over the next sort of 6 months. So the other dates we need to consider are sort of the end of life and end of support dates for some of the versions. By end of life we mean that the platform will no longer be supported by K2. By end of support we mean that the extended support that's offered to some clients will no longer be available. So it depends where you are on your support cycle with K2, but clearly you can see that by December 2018 4.6.11 will effectively no longer be supported in any capacity by K2. Skipping ahead to December next year, K2 4.7 will start to go end of life. And then realistically by 2021 we're going to see that completely out of support, certainly out of extended support. In terms of K25, realistically 2020 before we start seeing that come to end of life, and then extended support likely to run through to around 2020. So probably the key dates there for consideration for those people certainly on 4.7 moving to 5 would be December 2019, and perhaps looking to plan over the course of the next 12-18 months to ensure that you're in a position where you've upgraded to K25 by that time, just so you don't run the risk of 4.7 running out of support. So we talked earlier about our experience and how we've approached upgrades in the past, and certainly how we approached the K25 upgrade. And we talked about the fact that we use certain processes around that, but we also use a series of tools. So what we'd like to share with you now is some of our experiences and our approach as to making sure, as we say, that upgrade is as successful as possible. So I think the first thing really to look at and to understand is that there are options around the upgrade, as there are with everything, and it's about making the right choice for your business. Every business is going to be different. Every business's situation is unique, so it's important that actually we focus on that rather than taking a sort of standard approach to upgrades. So the first option obviously is you can do nothing, and you can revert to the timeline that we've just shown and say, okay, we've got time to play with, or actually where we are with K2 we're quite happy with what it offers to the business. So either long term or for the short term we'll carry on as we are, we won't do anything. Clearly in terms of complexity, effort and value, that's a kind of status quo. There's no benefit to that. You'll not get any additional value out of that because you've done nothing, and equally it won't cost anything to achieve that status quo at this moment in time. What you do have to consider obviously is the longer term cost as you get closer and closer to that platform becoming end of life or out of support, and that's really where the risk sits. So we would suggest that option one, doing nothing, carries the greatest level of risk within all these options, certainly when you consider risk versus reward. Option two really is the upgrade, but run what you've currently got in terms of workflows in legacy mode. and that basically means that they'll run as they are. They won't be migrated or upgraded to K2.5, so you won't take advantage of any of the benefits there, but they should still function as they are today. Clearly that's a reduced risks, but there is some complexity and there is some effort required in undertaking that process, and at some point you'll need to consider your migration strategy and your migration plan to move those workflows from 4.7 legacy up to full K2.5, because that legacy option will become redundant over time. I think in this scenario you've also got to consider what you develop new workflows in, whether you develop those in K2.5 or whether you continue to develop those in 4.7 and legacy mode, because effectively by doing that you're just really sort of impacting on the problem of upgrading at a later date. So in terms of value, clearly on option 2 there is some value to be had, because you will take advantage of some of the new features within K2.5 and at least it gets you onto the new platform. But obviously there is some complexity and some effort required to achieve that. The third option is to undertake the upgrade and to migrate any of those workflows from 4.7 to 5. Now clearly in terms of complexity and effort that's going to take more time, it's more of a complex approach. You need to consider what the workflows are doing for you now and how they're going to be redeveloped within K2.5 so that they continue to function. Obviously when doing that there's an awful lot more work that's required in terms of testing those workflows and regression testing those workflows, any remedial work that needs to be done, but the outcome of that is the greatest level of value in terms of the upgrade. So from what we're seeing with most of our clients at the moment is moving directly to K2.5 and actually migrating those workflows over. So I've just been asked by one of the audience, does legacy mode cover both forms and workflows or just the workflows? It depends on the forms, but predominantly we're talking workflows here. But some of the forms may need to be adapted. We'd really need to understand what those forms are doing for you and how they're working within the K2 platform, which I think is a good point. At the start of any of these processes, the key thing is to understand your existing environment, your existing K2 architecture, how that's built. A good example is we have some clients who have absolutely no workflows within K2, so their upgrade process has been relatively painless and has gone very, very smoothly. Others clients rely completely on workflows, smart forms, smart objects, etc. And obviously that's been a more complicated upgrade. So I hope that goes some way to answer the question, but happy to pick that up later on if you would like and talk a little bit more specifically about your particular application. So again, just returning to the slides, hopefully you can see there that we've got a number of options. Again, it's about making sure that the option that's chosen is right for the business, and that can only really be done on an individual basis. Just talking through then some of the reasons why the upgrade is so challenging, and predominantly that's because of the effort that needs to go into making sure that the upgrade happens correctly. The first thing for us is to actually get a baseline of your current system. So defining and executing end-to-end tests to baseline the app behaviour. So what are you doing with K2? How's it functioning? What are the outputs that you're expecting? And that will form our baseline for testing as we go through the upgrade process. What we would suggest you need at that point as well is an environment health check, an application audit, and from that we'll build a pre-recs checklist and a migration strategy. So again, it's really focusing that upgrade on what your requirements are as a business, what your applications require for that from that upgrade, and where you need to be as an output from that. Once we've done all of that, once we've got the foundations for that in place, then obviously it's a matter of upgrading the platform. But then we need to regression test all of the applications, all of the workflows, all of the forms, etc. So really at that point we're replicating the testing that we did to get to the baseline point. Now I would hope most clients have use cases and test scripts already in situ, And so it's really a question of replicating all of those as we go or as we complete the upgrade. There may well be, as a result of that testing, some defect resolution. So again, at that point, we're looking at resolving all of those issues. And then we move on to the migration piece of the upgrade in terms of what decisions have been made as to whether we run the current workflows in legacy mode or whether we actually migrate those across to K25. Assuming that we're going to migrate them to K25, obviously that migration has got to be done, and that's got to again be followed by regression testing, so running through all of those same scripts again, ensuring that we're getting the same outputs every time, and where necessary handling any defect resolution before we actually get to roll out to a production environment or a live environment for the users. And it's those regression testing and migration testing and defect resolutions that tend to take the most time. Obviously, until we get to the rollout point, hopefully this isn't impacting on the business because it's all being done in a test environment. But that work has still got to be done, it's still got to be undertaken. So that timeline needs to be considered. So when we talk about migration, again, why is it such a challenge? One of the key things really is that there's no official migration of workflow definitions from 4.7 to 5. And in order to benefit fully from 5, every workflow needs to be rebuilt for K25. So obviously there's effort involved in that piece, but equally there's effort involved in the testing of all of those workflows. Not only to get to the baseline point that we mentioned earlier, but also in terms of regression testing once the upgrade's been done and the migration's been done. Obviously, we would suggest that you test each phase because then it ensures that you capture and identify the root cause as early as possible, and you can do any remedial action. What that effectively results in is an awful lot of duplication throughout that overall process. And depending on the size of your K2 environment, that can be fairly extensive. Our view would be that if you can automate some of that, it streamlines the overall process and activities. And just to give you an example, let's take a company that's got 20 workflows. If you consider that an average migration might take 2 days for each workflow, and then you've got the regression testing at perhaps a day each for those, again, apologies. You can quite easily see how that ramps up to sort of 60 days of time and effort, 60 man days that is. So again, depends on how your team's structured, but there is definitely a cost to the business on all of that. Sorry, just looking at some of the questions again, I've just been asked another question. Is there any way to package and deploy clean K2 4.7 to K2 5, or will it absolutely be necessary to upgrade first? No, I mean we can deploy and package from 4.7 to 5, but again you've still got to rebuild those workflows. So yeah, it is possible to do that, and in fact we're engaged with a client at the moment who's running 4.7 in production, and they've built a completely separate production environment for K2.5, and they will actually do a K2.5 clean install and repackage and redeploy everything across. So there are different ways of going about the process, but it still results in that same level of work. It results in the same level of testing and the same level of migration or rebuilding of those workflows. One of the key things that we see, and this has been echoed by IBM, is that the cost of getting these things wrong can be exponentially expensive depending on when you capture it. Clearly, the earlier the bug is found, the lower the cost. So if you're upgrading and you find a problem and you capture that, at the earliest stage, in this case, sort of when you're gathering requirements, the cost of fixing that issue is relatively small. If you get to the point where it's found during, quality assurance and testing phases, so further down the journey, that that cost goes up. But again, it's still not a massive cost. Where the cost is really incurred is if that's not picked up when it goes into production. So, let's consider a workflow that, for whatever reason gets through all of your internal testing and gets out to production, but then doesn't function correctly, not only have you potentially got internal users and processes to consider and the cost implications of that, you've got potentially external customers that are interacting with that workflow that may be impacted upon. And you've also got to think about the cost of rollback and then redeploy to actually fix that. So getting in or identifying a problem, having to fix a problem in production can be hugely costly. And that's obviously what we want to avoid with any process or any development that we do. So just before we sort of move on to how best we can assist with this, a quick summary in terms of what we've sort of covered and the importance of making sure that we get things right. There are major feature enhancements and benefits within K25. And we would advocate, everybody at some point moving from 4.7 to 5, purely because of those benefits, just ignoring the ongoing support issue. But the fact remains that upgrade can be complicated and it can be very time consuming. Downtime for your users, errors, they can all be costly, so you've got to make sure that any process is managed to mitigate downtime and errors. We have got options around upgrade, and again we would advocate that any customer looks at those options in line with their own individual and unique requirements, and collaborate with us, ask us for guidance, work with us, and we'll help you to make sure that upgrade happens in the best possible way for your business. When we talk about workflows, obviously the key complication around K25 is the migration of workflows, but we can run those in legacy mode. So again, there's some choice around that, but it's really, again, what best suits your business. At the end of the day, what is key is that preparation, that planning, and making sure you've got a way of testing the upgrade and any migration to ensure that actually once it's rolled out to production or live, K25 isn't going to cause you any further complications or problems or downtime. So I guess it sort of all really boils down to, our approach is to provide you with a solution that means you don't have any downtime, you don't have any of the disruptions that we've spoken about, you don't have any issues with your upgrade. It all happens very, very smoothly, very seamlessly, with less effort on your behalf, less complication and certainly less risk. So what we'd like to do is to share with you how we would go about doing that in a fairly generic fashion, but again, focused and streamlined directly to your business. So what does a successful upgrade look like for us? Well, we've spent the last sort of 16 years working with K2 and in the K2 sector and environment. So we've been through these upgrades numerous times before and seen point releases, but also major platform releases in that period. So we've taken that experience and we've started by building a sort of methodology around what we do. So this is the process that we go through at the outset of understanding what the upgrade might look like, how that's going to be done. So that's your environment audit, it's your readiness review, it's making sure actually that you're planning for a successful upgrade. What we then do is we automate the migration of those workflows. So rather than rebuilding the workflows manually, we have an automation tool that will actually take those workflows from 4.7 to 5. We're going to augment that with automated testing. So at the outset, when we do the baseline testing, we'll build automated scripts that will test against your existing K2 4.7 deployment, and we'll reuse those tests all the way through the upgrade and the migration process to make sure that we're getting the same outputs every time. So by automating that testing, we're taking all the time and effort out of doing that manually time and time again. So therefore speeding up the process, but making sure that we can actually analyse each result and make sure they're exactly the same every single time we do the testing. And that's what we believe results in a successful upgrade and migration strategy. So just to explore that a little bit more, with regards to the methodology and the planning, again, this is something that we've used over many years of upgrades and deployments with K2. We start with an environmental health check. So will the existing architecture support K2.5 is a major question. So that's the starting point. Are you going to stay on-prem or are you going to go cloud? Because that will have an impact on your approach to the upgrade and how that's done. And just to come back to the previous question, whether you upgrade 4.7 or whether you start with a clean install and repackage everything across. We'll also at this point consider obviously any security issues and also accessibility issues to your on-prem servers, how that upgrade's actually going to happen and how that will function. Obviously at this point, if the architecture or the environment you're in at the moment needs enhancement to support K2.5, then it's at this point that would get addressed. We'll then do an audit of your application. So again, number of workflows, number of apps, the number of users, what you're integrated with, how that's functioning, what the use cases are around all the apps and the workflows. Again, so we can make sure that we've got those test cases and use cases in place to make sure that the testing throughout the upgrade and migration process functions correctly. At this point with clients, we'll often also just make sure that the workflows and the applications are still appropriate for the business, because I think that's a sense check that is advisable at this stage. And often we work with clients who have had workflows and apps in place for many years, but actually never sort of review those and check as to how appropriate they still are for the business or whether they need enhancements at this stage. We'll then work with you to build the migration strategy. So again, how will we actually migrate those workflows across, or will they run in legacy mode? And what happens to any workflows that are in flight? And by that we mean workflows that have already started and are already in process. A number of our clients and many businesses have workflows that might span days, weeks, months in some cases. So what are we going to do with those workflows that are in flight? Do they remain in 4.7 and just migrate everything new to K2.5? Or do you leave everything in 4.7 until you run down the in-flight ones? Or do you actually just kill off the in-flight ones and migrate them across to 5? Again, very much dependent on your own unique and individual situation. And then finally, we'll build with you a prerequisite to the upgrade, a checklist essentially, that will talk you through all of those things and all of the things that need to happen before we actually start the upgrade process. So as we said earlier, the process is one element of how we go about things, and the methodology is one element. But we also overlay that with automation to make sure that the upgrade and migration process is as seamless as possible and has as little impact on the business as possible. So over the years of having done K2 projects, deployments and upgrades, we've developed a tool called Bench QA. It essentially automates all of your testing within the K2 platform, and it's been designed specifically for K2 and K2.5. So it fully integrates with all of your K2 smart form controls and smart object runtimes, and will actually allow you to build either single or multiple cases, test cases, which can be added to projects, and then you can either run those single test cases, or you can join test cases together, and we can even schedule those cases over a period of time or run them all at night with full analytics at the back end to say what's been successful, what's failed, where it's failed, and so on and so forth. So from your baseline all the way through to the completion of your migration, we can automate that testing, and having built the test cases and test scenarios within Bench QA, you've got those then for future use, and the tool is there for additional projects. So similarly to Bench QA, we also have Power Tools, which enables you to convert K2 4.7 processes and workflows across to K2.5. So it analyses them, it converts them, it saves and reports on the conversion outcomes. We've had great success with this tool. I'm not going to suggest that it will handle every single process, every single flow, but it will report on where there are errors, where there are issues, and it highlights any remedial actions that you need to undertake. So what's nice with Power Tools is that yes, it will migrate and convert the majority of your flows and processes. There may be one or two that don't convert successfully, but it will at least highlight where you've got an issue and where you can apply that remedial action. So it speeds up that whole migration process and that whole rebuild, or replaces the whole rebuild process that you might be considering in terms of migration. So with automation, obviously, we can overlay our core processes, and our suggestion would be that that's going to be the best way to get the success out of your K2 upgrade and make it as seamless and as cost effective and as quick as possible for you. Before we start any of that, what we would suggest is that, again, because everybody's different, everybody's unique, we can't say that there's a one-size-fits-all approach to the upgrade and migration. We also can't determine, without your assistance, when's the best time for you to be considering this upgrade, because there are all sorts of considerations around time with that. So what we would suggest is that the first starting point is a readiness review. So just taking a few hours really to sit with you and understand where you are with K2 at the moment, what your ongoing journey with K2 and your K2 life cycle looks like, your future aspirations, and where you see that new apps are going to be developed for K2 and what you want to get out of the platform moving forward, and really just looking at with you how ready you are for that upgrade, and talking through timelines and so on and so forth, and that really sets the scene for the upgrade moving forward. So I hope that's been useful. Obviously, we're happy to chat, sort of moving on from the webinar, and we're happy to answer any questions that you've got either on this afternoon's chat or or thereafter, either via the booking form or via the email that you can see on the bottom of the screen. I'm just going to pull up a couple of the questions that we've got landed now. So. Okay, so would it not be much faster to rebuild 20 workflows from scratch in less than 60 days? Well, potentially it would be, but those are the typical timescales we see in terms of migration rather than build. I think one of the key things is that if you're considering rebuilding all of those workflows, you've got to factor in the design time of doing that, making sure that they're still fit for purpose, etc. And you've still got all of that testing. So it's very difficult to say that yes, 20 workflows are going to take 60 days to migrate. It's an example. It's something that we don't feel is beyond the realms of reason in terms of what we regularly see. But again, everybody is unique. Everybody's different. And to answer your question, yes, it may be more cost effective to rebuild those workflows. However, our suggestion would be it would be far more cost effective to use a tool such as Power Tools to migrate those across and just spend the time looking at any small amounts of remedial action that come out of that. So again, hopefully that answers that question. Next question, I wonder if Power Tools is like package and deployment. It's not really, it's more just pure migration, but again, it depends on how you want to approach that upgrade. We can move those across to a clean environment, but obviously we've got to rebuild them first and migrate them first, and that's where Power Tools would come in. So would your upgrade also account for third-party service brokers used in K2 4.7? Yes, I mean obviously within any upgrade we look at third-party service brokers, we look at integrations, we look at APIs that are used within K2, we cover the whole point, or the whole application, the whole platform, and that's really the point of the methodology at the outset, in terms of making sure that all of those issues are addressed up front and that your planning or your upgrade is planned to account for all of those and that nothing gets missed. We've been in scenarios whereby we've looked at upgrades and we've gone through all the planning, etc. But if you haven't looked in depth at what K2 is doing for your business, it's quite easy to miss, again, a small third-party broker or an API and integration. So again, that's the importance really of doing the planning up front and making sure that that's robust and comprehensive. Again, hopefully that helps to answer that question. I've not got any further questions, so if anybody has got anything, we've got a few minutes left if people would like to raise any other questions or if there's anything else that we can help with. Failing that, then you're more than welcome to drop us an email at the email address on the bottom of the screen, which is roger@velocity-it.com. Obviously, you can also find us on the website, which is velocity-it.com. And as we said, we'll be sending a form out to all of the attendees, basically to take advantage of the readiness review meeting and get that scheduled in for you, really just to take your thoughts and conversation about your K25 upgrade to the next level. And I would like to thank everybody for their time this afternoon. Again, please feel free to get in contact if we can be of further assistance, and please keep an eye on the website for anything else that, or for other webinars and other sessions that we're running. Thank you very much for your time.